All right, so slope of a line, this is section 10.4. And so there are, when we defined a slope, remember if you look at the roof, your roof, there's some steepness to it. And so that's the idea of slope. The slope is how steep a line is. And so we define slope as the change in y divided by the change in x. So the y coordinates, you're going to see that the y coordinates will be in the numerator and the x coordinates will be in the denominator. So it's a change in y divided by the change in x. That can also be written as this, rise over run. So you may remember those words, rise over run. The rise is in the numerator, the run is in the denominator. So the rise, remember the y-axis goes up and down? So notice in the numerator you see change in y. Okay, so it's easy to remember. Rise, the axis that goes up and down is the y-axis. So in the numerator you have change in y. The x-axis is the one that goes horizontal. So it's kind of like you're walking or you're running on level ground. So that's a change in x. So rise over run. But remember, the rise is in the numerator, the run's in the denominator. You can't reverse it. The formula, though, and on the video it shows you where the formula comes from, but on your final I'll give you the formula. Here's the formula. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so remember, change in something means subtraction. See, that's right here, the word change. So you notice the subtraction idea. You subtract the y coordinates. So change in y means to subtract the y coordinates. Change in x means to do what? Subtract the x coordinates. But the order matters. When you're talking about slope, when you're finding the slope, the order in which you subtract the coordinates do matter. So in other words, if you put y2 first, then in the denominator you have to put x2 first. Okay? Now you could have put y1 first, so you could have said y1 minus y2. It does not matter. Now the one I'll give you will be this one here. It doesn't matter, but remember we said the order matters. So if you put y1 first, then in the denominator you have to put what expression first? x1. So x1 minus x2. Okay? So the order does matter in which you subtract the coordinates. Okay? So one of the things, there are several things that you're going to see in the video that's not in the final. So I'm trying to cover only the part that's going to be on the final, but some of the understanding goes back to what's in the video, which we're not going to do because we only have about an hour and 5 minutes left. So the final, with respect to the slope, here's how it's going to look. All right, so it's going to look like this. So the problem is going to say this. It's going to say, find the equation of a line that contains the points, and the one that's on the final, the slope is going to be an integer. It's not going to be a fraction for this one. It's not going to be a fraction. So I'm going to make the point, I'm going to choose points in which the slope is going to be an integer. So that way you'll have some idea of what to expect on the final. All right, so find the equation of a line that contains the points. And so let's say the points are -2, 20, and again, I got to make sure it's an integer. And let's say this is, let's say this is 5 comma 5 comma 6. I think that's just going to work. No, it's not going to work. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's going to work. It should work. Okay. So, -220 and 5 comma 6. All right. So you want to find the equation of that line. Now, when we talk about the equation of lines, you know you dealt with the equation of lines. Those lines that you graphed, The lines that you graph, remember y equals, so what? Something like this. Y equals 2x minus 3. That's the equation of a line. That's the equation of a line. 2x minus y equals 7. Those are equations of lines. You graph those, remember that? When you graphed these, those were linear equations. When you graphed linear equations, you ended up graphing what kind of figure? You graphed a line. Y equals 6. That's one of the things you had to turn in today. Y equals 6, if you recall, you probably don't, but if you recall, y equals 6 is what kind of line? Horizontal. Horizontal, very good. Because this says that y is always going to equal what? 6, no matter what x is. So when you graphed it, it turned out to be a horizontal line. So that's the equation of a line. X equal 2 is an equation of a line. X equal 2, since x is by itself and there's no y, what kind of line was that? Do you recall? It's a vertical line. It would be a vertical line. The other two, if an x and a y is there, it's one of those slanted lines. It's a slanted line. If one of the variables is missing, it's either going to be horizontal or it's going to be what? Vertical. Okay, so those are all equations of lines. So when it says find the equation of a line, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for something that looks like this. Okay? All right, now the final, though, is going to say this. It's going to say write the equation in standard form. Okay, so find the equation of the line that contains those 2 points, and then it's going to say write the equation in standard form. Okay? All right, so here's the way you're going to do this. So the first thing you have to do in order to find the equation of a line is you got to find the slope of the line. So part A, you're going to find the slope. All right, and we're going to find the slope using the formula. And what's the formula for slope?
Y equals mx plus b.
No. Y equals mx plus b is we haven't talked about that yet, but y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form. The formula for slope, we just wrote it. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, I also need to tell you that the symbol for slope is at lowercase m. So find the slope. So the symbol for slope, so the slope formula is, this is symbol for slope, lowercase m. So the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so that's what you have to use for part A. All right, now I'm going to rewrite the points. And what are the points I'm looking at? -2, 20, and 5, 6, right? All right, now, one of the things you may want to do, and it's also stated in the videos when you look at it, one of the things you want to do is label those points. You want to label the points using the y2, y1, and so on. All right, now the subscripts, see the subscripts 2 and 1? Those come from which point you're looking at. So if you call this the first point right here, and this the second point, then this is the x-coordinate of what point? The first point. So x sub 1, so those are subscripts. And this is the y-coordinate of the first point. So label these x1, y1, then this has to be what? x2, y2. And then all you do is just plug these back into the formula. So your slope then is y2. What's y2? 6. Subtract y1, which is 20, divided by, now remember, if you start with y2, you have to start with what? x2. What's x2? 5. Subtract a what? -2. Okay. What's the numerator? What's 6 minus 20? -14. What's the denominator? +7. 5. Remember, to change subtraction to addition, so you got to add the opposites. That's 5 plus a +2. So that's 7, right? And then reduce, you get what? Okay, yeah. So the final, your slope for this problem here, your slope will be an integer. So make the rest of it fairly easy to deal with. All right, so you found the slope. Any questions to find the slope? All right, so you're going to have to find the slope in the final, so make sure you know how to use the formula. All right, now here's the next part. Okay, so remember, all I did was find the slope, right? So the next part is to write the equation of a line. All right, so here's how we're going to do this. To write the equation of a line, All right, equations of lines. There are two forms. One's called y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. So that's your, that's called the slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So whenever you get y by itself, that's called the slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. All right, I have y equals 2/3 x minus 3, right? Since y is by itself, this is in what form? What's this form called? Slope-intercept form. Now let's see why it's called slope-intercept form. All right, so Cynthia, Cynthia went ahead and she labeled those points, which is what you had to do, because it says do what? Make sure you label the points. All right, so to find the slope of a line, how many points did she label on this line? 3. How many points are on this line, though? An infinite number. Okay, don't say a lot. There's an infinite number. Now, these points are really solutions, right? So that means that if you plug those points here into your equation, it satisfies the equation. The left side is going to equal the right side. But to find the slope of a line, you only need 2 points. In fact, that's what you need is 2 points to find the slope of a line. So I'm going to, for right now, I'm going to use, so when you re-watch this, notice that this is coming from that worksheet you turned in. So I'm going to use these 2 points. So let's find the slope of the line containing, and so let's say I'm going to use -3, -5, and 3, -1. Okay? Now you see where I'm getting those points from? Let's see where I'm getting those points from? I'm getting those points from here. Y'all see it? Okay, so I want to find the slope of this line. All right, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay. So just like we just did on your test, when you find the slope of a line, it's a good idea to label these points. So what are you going to call this one? X1, and this -5, that's -5. That will be called what? Y1. And then the 3 will be your X2, and the -1 will be your Y2. Very good. Now remember the slope formula, and what's the symbol for slope?
M.
That lowercase m. So you're going to say slope will equal y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? All right, what's y2? -1. Subtract y1, which is a -5, and put -5 in parentheses, divided by, since I started y2, I have to start with what? x2, and what's x2 here? 3. Subtract x1, which is -3, right? Okay. Now, if you don't remember how to deal with signed numbers, use your calculator. So what's -1 subtract the -5? That's -1 plus 5. That's -1 plus 5, which is what? 4. Good. And the denominator, that's 3 subtract the -3 is -3 plus what? 3, which is 6. And when I reduce, what is that? 2/3. So the slope of that line is 2/3. Okay? Y'all see that? So that line is 2/3. Now, one of the other things you got to remember is this. This line rose. As you go from left to right, you see the y values. You got to look at the y values. You see the y values are increasing. So that means your graph is rising. It's rising. So if the graph is rising, the slope has to be what kind of number? Positive. All right, so the slope is positive, so that means the graph is rising. Okay? Now, what I want you to do, see this 2/3? Do you see 2/3 anywhere in this equation? Yes. Is the coefficient of which letter? X. So when we talk about this right here, y equals mx plus b, the slope-intercept form, that's why we label this coefficient m, because this number that you multiply an x by is the what? The slope. All right. But remember, though, what letter has to be by itself? Y. Okay. Once you get y by itself, it's now slope-intercept form. And whatever you're multiplying x by, that is the what? No. Whatever you're multiplying x by, that is the slope. That is the slope. M is your slope. Now, the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the what? The y-axis. You had to graph a line using x and y-intercepts on the test. So the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. The x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So once you look at this, where does at what number does the graph cross the y-axis? That's -3, I think, right? -3. You know it's -3 because what is the y-intercept? What coordinate is 0? No. The y-intercept, what coordinate is 0?
No, X.
X. And you see the x is 0 here, right? So the y-intercept is -3. In the equation, do you see a -3?
No.
Yes, right here. That constant is your y-intercept. Does that equation tell you anything about the x-intercept?
No.
No. It only tells you what the slope is and which intercept is. Which intercept? The y. Okay, so that's why we call this y equals mx plus b. So m is your slope, and b is called the what? But in terms of intercepts, guys, which one?
Wow.
The y-intercept. That's your y-intercept. So that's why it's called slope-intercept form. Okay? All right, so that's why I wanted you to see right here that when you get y by itself, that's called slope-intercept form, and you've been graphing things in slope-intercept form for at least a week now. All right, so when you get y by itself, it's the slope-intercept form. The coefficient of x is the slope, and the constant is your y-intercept. Okay? All right, now, let's go back to this. Right here. Huh?
What was the M again?
M is a slope. M is a slope. And the B is the y-intercept. The constant is the y-intercept. Okay, so the other equation you need to be aware of is this. All right, so remember in the problem on your final, it's going to say write the equation in standard form. All right, here's what we mean by standard form. This is standard form. So this is slope-intercept form, right here, y equals mx plus b. This is standard form. So standard form is this. ax plus by equal c. ax plus by equal c. Where a, b, and c are integers. Where a, b, and c are integers, and which means there are no fractions. So when you write in standard form, you don't want any fractions. Now the one in your final, you're not going to have fractions to begin with, because what did you notice about the slope here? The slope was what kind of number? Not this one, but what kind of number is this one? No, yeah, but no, whole number. Okay, you got to learn your numbers now. A whole number, the smallest whole number is 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are whole numbers. What I was hoping you would say, that's an integer. An integer. So the integers are your whole numbers and their negative counterparts. So -7 is not a whole number. -7 is a what? An integer. 7 is a what? A whole number. It's also an integer, right? Okay. All right. So the one in your final is going to be an integer, the slope. So you don't have to worry about fractions at all. All right. So here's how you're going to do this. So let's go back to the problem we're working on. So in your final, you're going to have a problem that's going to say, find the equation of a line that contains the points, and these are the points I'm using. Your final is going to be different points. -220 and 5, 6. And it's going to say, write the equation in standard form. First thing you're going to do is find the what? First thing you're going to do is find the what? The slope. You're going to find the slope. And so you can find the slope using the slope formula. You're going to label your points and you plug into your formula. You're going to get the slope. Okay? Now part B. So this is part A. So part B, what you're going to do now is this. Part B. This will be part B. So in part B, you're going to do this now. So part A was you had to find the slope. Part B is you're going to find the equation. You're going to write the equation. All right, now I've got to say this. You're going to write the equation. You're going to write the equation using point slope form. Okay, so I got to tell you what that is. Now I'll give you the formula for point slope form. All right, it's very simple. Just watch what I do. Okay, so first thing you do is find the slope. Then you're going to write the equation of the line, but you want the final answer to be in what form? Standard form. You want the final answer to be in standard form. But to get it to that form, you first of all got to put it in this form, point slope form. So here's point slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. That is point slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. Okay? Now listen carefully. To do part B, you have to have done part A, because in part B, you see the slope. So you need to know the what?
Slope.
The slope. So did I find the slope?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the slope?
-2.
-2. All right. -2. Now, the x1, y1, that's a point on the line. So all you need is one point on the line to put in there. How many points do you know that are on that line? 2. It does not matter, guys. It does not matter which point you use. You'll get the same answer. Does not matter. Now, I'll do both of them just to show you. So you go back here and you tell me which point you want to use. Which point would be easier to use? 5, 6. No, the 5, 6 would be easier to use, because they're both positive, right? All right, so 5, 6. All right, so I'm going to use 5, 6. I'm going to use 5, 6. So this is my x1 and this is the what? y1. All right, so here's what you do. You're going to say y minus y1. What's y1? 6 equals the slope. What's the slope? -2 times x minus x1. What's x1? 5. All right, so that's where we're at. And now all you do is get rid of the parentheses. And how do you get rid of the parentheses? Distributive property. Okay, so I get y minus 6 equals -2x plus 10. Y minus 6 equals -2x plus 10. Okay? All right, now, what form do you want this in? Standard form. And what standard form means is you bring all the variables to one side and the what? Constant to the other. See how it looks? Ax plus by equals c. You want the variables on one side, constant on the other. So that means this. That means, first of all, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. You see what I'm doing? I'm going to add 6 to both sides. I'm going to line my like terms. So I get y equals -2x plus what? 16. Now, before I go on, what form is this right here that I just wrote? Slope-intercept form. And all I do now is bring the -2x over. Bring the -2x to the left-hand side, and so therefore, what's the answer? 2x plus y equal 16. That's your answer. That is standard form. Okay, so let's do one more with this, just to give you an idea. All right, that's standard form. And guys, when we put it in standard form, we always put the x first. So don't say y plus 2x. Say what? 2x plus y. Okay, put the 2x first. All right, so let's do another one where we we do this process, okay? So again, I'm gonna choose points in which the slope is going to be an integer because that's what's going to look like on the final. All right, so remember what we just did. Okay, so number 2. Find the equation of a line that passes through. Oh, I wanted to do the same. I didn't do it, but I'll do it in the next problem. But you see how we use 5, 6? Let's go ahead and do this. See how I use 5, 6? Someone else could have used what point? Negative 220. So let's use negative 220 just to show you you're going to get the same answer, okay? So let's use negative 220. So this is the x1. This is now what? y1. Just to show you. So I get y minus point slope form. Y minus y1. What's y1? 20 equals the slope. What's the slope? Negative 2 times x minus x1. What's x1? Negative 2. All right, now be careful. You had something like this in previous worksheets. X subtract negative 2 really is what? X plus 2. You need to write this as x plus 2. If you distribute now, you're going to mess up. Before you distribute, write x subtract negative 2 as what? X plus 2. Okay, so you need to do that. So y minus 20 equals negative 2 times x plus 2. Now do what? Distribute. So I get y minus 20 equals what? Negative 2x minus 4, right? A negative times a positive is a negative. You see how you can easily mess up in certain places? So be careful. All right, and then we're going to do just like we did. I'm going to add 20 to both sides. And so I get y equals negative 2x plus what? 16. And isn't that what we had right here in slope-intercept form? Okay, and so now all you do is bring the negative 2x over. So what's the answer? 2x plus y equal 16. So all the point is here that it does not matter which point you use. Okay, it does not matter. Okay, you'll get the same answer in the end. Okay? All right, so let's go back over here. So find the equation of a line that passes through, and let's say the points this time are negative 6, negative 1. And again, I'm trying to make this be an integer for the slope. And let's say negative 1, 14. Okay? All right. And then you want to write the equation. Write the equation in standard form. Write the equation in standard form. All right. So if you're gonna write the equation of a line, what is the first thing you have to do always? Find the slope. All right. So part A, find the slope. Well, to find the slope, I've got to know the formula for slope. What's the formula for slope? Very good. And so I'm going to rewrite those 2 points here. Just go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and rewrite them. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and rewrite them is because right underneath them, I'm going to label those scripts. So negative 6 would be called what? X1. Negative 1 will be Y1. Negative 1 here will be X2. And 14 is Y2. Okay? So now the slope equals y2. What's y2? 14. Subtract a negative 1 divided by. Now since I started y2, I have to start with x2. What's x2? Negative 1. Subtract a negative 6. All right, so if you don't remember anything about your sign numbers, use your calculator. But 14 subtract negative 1 is the same thing as saying 14 plus 1. negative 1 subtract the negative 6 means negative 1 plus 6, right? And the numerator is what, 15? So 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay? So the slope is 3. All right, so part A, you had to find the slope, so we did. Now part B. Part B is where you write the equation using what form? No, you want the answer in standard form, but you have to use, you're going to use point slope. Remember point slope right here. You use point slope, okay? So you're going to use this. So part B is going to be write the equation using point slope. And I'll give you the point slope form. All right, so what's the formula for point slope? Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. All right, now in order to use it, you got to know the slope. And I do, what's the slope? 3. And you need to know one point. Which point do you want to use? It does not matter. Just tell me which one. Negative 6, negative 1? Okay. All right, so we're going to use negative 6, negative 1. Now, since I'm using negative 6, negative 1, then negative 6 would be called the x1, and then negative 1 would be called the y1. And you just plug things in. So here we go. Y minus y1, what's y1? Negative 1 equals the slope, which is 3, times x minus x1, what's x1? Negative 6. Okay, now before you distribute, make sure you rewrite this subtraction that looks like this. Y subtract negative 1, rewrite it. You know that's supposed to look like what? Y plus 1 equal 3 times. X subtract negative 6, you know that's supposed to look like x plus 6. Okay, now distribute. So I get y plus 1 equals, and then that's 3x plus 18. All right. And so remember at this point, that's where we're going to first next put it in slope-intercept form. So we're going to subtract 1. So I get y equals 3x plus 17. And now we're going to, remember that's slope-intercept form, but they don't want the answer in slope-intercept form. They want the answer in what? Standard form. So standard form just says just bring all the variables to one side, constant the other, and make sure that everything's an integer. So basically all you're doing is going to do what here? Subtract 3x from both sides. And so I get negative 3x plus y equal what? 17. Right. That's all you do. All right, so that's the answers. That is standard form. Okay. Now sometimes, I'm just going to say this, sometimes in standard form they're going to want x to be a positive coefficient. So basically all you would do is just change the signs. So you would say 3x, and then this becomes what? Minus y equal, and then this is a negative 17. So either one's fine, okay? Either one's fine. You just multiply both sides by negative 1. That's all you did. Notice all you did to go from here to here is multiply both sides by negative 1. All right. So you have one of your final. That's 10 points. Okay? 10 points. Easy to do. Just look at this again before the final. And the idea of slope, I'm gonna. There are some videos that are on Canvas. 2 of them I put. I'm gonna put a couple more that you may want to look at before the final. All right. Now here's the other thing you got to do. All right. So listen carefully to this. All right. There's going to be number 3. All right. So number 3. So number 3 says this. Find the equation of a line that has a given slope and passes through or contains, sometimes they'll use the word contains, and contains or passes through the point, and let's say the point is -3, 2. All right, and the slope is, let's say, 5/7. That's your slope. All right, so you're going to find the equation of a line that passes through that point and has that slope, okay? And they want the answer in slope-intercept form. Write the equation in slope-intercept form. Okay? All right, I'm going to say this. Remember in the previous problem, part A, you had to do what? Find the slope. Do I have to find the slope in this one? No, it's given. So this one is kind of easy to deal with. So the slope is given, so there's no part A to do. Then think about the part B we did earlier. Part B said you're going to write the equation using what form? Point slope. Okay, it's good. So use point slope form. And so here's point slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So y minus y1, what's y1 here? 2, good. See, this is going to be x1, this is what? y1. Equals the slope, what's the slope? 5/7 times x minus x1, what's x1? Very good. Now, just like we did a while ago, before you distribute, rewrite x subtract -3 as x plus 3, okay? So y minus 2 equals 5/7 times x plus 3. Any questions? Now distribute. Now remember, some of you have a little issues with fractions. You better get a handle on that real quick. Okay, so distribute. So I get y minus 2 equals 5/7 x, right? 5/7 times x is 5/7 x. That part's easy. Now, 5/7 times what? 3. That's 3/1. So I'm multiplying these two fractions. Now, really, you want to reduce first if you can. But can I reduce anything here? No. Just multiply the numerators. What's the numerators when multiplied? And then multiply the denominators where the denominators were multiplied. So this becomes plus what? 15/7. Okay? And one more step when you're done. Now, this is where you're going to use your calculator because you have fractions here. All right, so I got to get the problem said to get in what form? Slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept forms, I got to get what letter by itself? Y. So that means I got to get rid of what? Subtract 2. So that means I got to do what? Add 2. All right, so here's what you do. And y'all remember that -2 and a +2 is what number? 0. So I get y equals 5/7 x. Now this is where you can use your calculator. On your calculator, you're going to say 15 divided by 7. 15 divided by 7. 15 divided by 7 plus what? 2 equal, and I get this decimal, right? But you know how to deal with that. So what button do I press? Second, and then PRB, and then equal, and I get this mixed number, right? Okay, so I get this mixed number. So my mixed number is 4 1/7. But you got to rewrite it as a what? Improper fraction. So 7 times 4 is 28. 28 plus 1 is 29. So it's 29/7. So what's the answer? Y equals 5/7 x plus what? 20/7. Okay? So that's your answer in slope-intercept form. So the 5/7 is going to be the slope. Makes sense because you were told that was a slope, right? The 29/7 is where the graph crosses the what? 29 divided by 7, or or 4 1/7 is where the graph crosses the what? The y-axis, because that is your y-intercept. That's your y-intercept. And so that's 10 points. So let's do one more like this, see what happens. Okay, number 4. All right, number 4. All right, so again, you're going to find the equation of the line. Find the equation of the line that has the given slope and passes through the given point. So it has the given slope and the given point. So here's the given slope. Let's say the given slope is negative 3/5, and the point that's on that line, let's say is let's say it's -4, -2. Okay. So think about the first two problems with it. If 2 points are given, you got to find the what? What do you have to find? What did you have to find first? The slope. But I already know the slope here, right? So then I don't have to do that part A that I did earlier. I just go directly to that part B. And part B is where you have to rewrite it first as what form? No, that's the answer you want to write it in. I forgot to write that. So you want the answer, yeah, you want the answer in slope-intercept form. But you have to put in point-slope form, right? All right, so here's your work. So you're going to say first use point-slope form. And what's point-slope form? I'll give it to you, but what is point-slope form? Very good. Okay, so now -4 is going to be your what? X1, -2 is going to be your Y1. All right, so you just plug things in. Y minus Y1, what's Y1? -2 equals the slope, which is -3/5 times X minus -4. Okay, now before we distribute, rewrite these sides. Y subtract -2 is Y plus 2. X subtract -4 is X plus 4. All right, couple more steps and you're done. And that's where you can use your calculator. Okay, so what's the next step? Distribute. All right, good. So we're going to get Y plus 2 equals, what's -3/5 times X? What's -3/5? -3/5 times a positive 4. And that's really 4/1. -12/5. Good. So you agree I get Y plus 2 equals -3/5 X minus 12/5. Now the next thing I got to do is get Y by itself because I want the answer in what form? Slope-intercept. So that means I got to do what to both sides in this case? Subtract 2. And notice I'm on my terms, so this is 0 here, so I get Y equals -3/5 X. Now on your calculator, notice I'm circling those constants. On the calculator, what are you going to put in the calculator? You're going to put what first? -12/5 plus a what? -2, and then equal, and I get this decimal. And then I change it to a fraction. It's going to change to a mixed number first, but I'm going to say second, PRB equal. So I get -4 2/5. -4 2/5. But I'm going to rewrite this back as a improper fraction. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 plus 2 is 22. But this is really a what? -22 over 5. Very good. And there's your answer. So the -3/5 is your slope, which you knew that's what it was because that's what it said, right? But that -22/5 or that -4 2/5, is the what? The y-intercept. That's where the graph would cross the y-axis if you were to graph it. Okay? All right. Any questions on that? All right. So that's 2 of your problems. 2 of your problems. 20 points. Don't lose those points. Okay, now, here's the other idea. Okay, listen carefully to this. Still dealing with the idea of slope. Still dealing with the idea of slope. Okay, listen carefully. If you have 2 lines that are parallel, 2 lines that are parallel. If you have 2 lines that are parallel, what do you notice about their steepness? They're the same. They have the same steepness. So 2 lines that are parallel have the same slope. Okay? So 2 lines are parallel. They have the same slope. All right. If 2 lines are perpendicular, now just kind of remind you something that you probably forgot from high school geometry. If you have 2 lines that are perpendicular, the perpendicular indicates that they intersect and they form what kind of angles? Right angles. That's what that means. So if you have 2 lines that are perpendicular, they intersect and they form right angles. That's what that perpendicular means. Now, let me go back to the parallel lines before I finish the perpendicular. I'm going to call this L1. I'm going to call this L2. The symbol for parallel is this. L1 is parallel. It looks like 2 parallel segments. Is parallel to L2. This is a symbol right here. That's a symbol for parallel. Okay? So L1's parallel to L2. Now remember, if 2 lines are parallel, what do you know about their slopes? They're the same. Okay, now we're on perpendicular. If 2 lines are perpendicular. Okay, so notice this line's falling right here, so it's going to have what kind of slope? Positive or negative? Negative. Very good. This line's rising, it's going to have what kind of slope? Positive. And here's the relationship. To see where this comes from, it would take quite a few minutes. We don't have that time, so I'm just going to tell you what the relationship is. 2 lines are perpendicular if their slopes, 2 lines are perpendicular if their slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. They're not equal. If they were equal, their lines would be what? Parallel. So 2 lines are perpendicular if their slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. 2 lines are perpendicular if their slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. All right, now here's what that means. Let's call this L1 and this L2. If the slope of L1 is negative 2/5, okay? So if you know the slope of L1 is negative 2/5 and the L2 is perpendicular to it, then the slope of L2 has to be what? Okay, so negative reciprocals, the negative idea means you change the sign. So instead of negative, it'll be what? Positive, and then you take the reciprocal. So what's the reciprocal of 2/5? 5/2. That's what we mean by negative reciprocals. So the negative reciprocal of negative 2/5 is what? Positive 5/2. Okay? So notice if they're perpendicular, one's going to be negative, the other's going to be what? Positive. Okay? So if the slope of L1 is, let's say, I'm making this up now, if the slope of L1 is, let's say, 4, then the slope of L2, now we're assuming that those two lines are perpendicular. Now, here's the symbol for perpendicular. L1 is perpendicular, it's like that upside down T. See how that upside down T looks like they form a right angle? That's the symbol for perpendicular. So L1's perpendicular to L2. So you're told they're perpendicular now. So if the slope of L1's 4, then the slope of L2 has to be what? Negative? And what's reciprocal of 4? 1/4. So good. So what's the slope of L2 then? Negative 1/4. Okay? So you change the sign and you take the reciprocal. That's all that is. Okay, now here's what your final is going to look like, that problem. That's to be a multiple choice problem, by the way, in your final. So that's going to be worth 5 points. The other two be worth how many points each? 10. So here's what your final is going to look like, though. So your final is going to say something like this. Line L is defined by the equation okay, and here's the equation. Negative 3/5 x equal y plus 2. Okay? So line L is defined by that equation. Line M is defined by the equation and here's the equation. I'm trying to make this up. Here's the equation. Negative 3x equal 5y plus 1. And then the question's this. Are the two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? That's the question. Are the two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? All right, so here's how you can do it. To determine if two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, all you need to know is their what? Slope. You'll notice that the equations of lines are given. Earlier, we talked about an equation of a line where you can easily determine the slope, but that equation had to be in what form? Slope-Intercept Form. Okay, so good. So what you want to do is change each of those lines to what form? Slope-Intercept Form. Okay? So note, change each line, change each equation to slope-intercept form. Okay? All right, so here we go. So the first one's this, negative 3/5 x equals y plus 2. So I got to get y by itself. So all I got to do is what? No, not add 2 to each side. Subtract 2, right? To get y by itself. Because right now I'm doing what? Adding 2. So subtract 2. So therefore y equals negative 3/5 x minus 2, right? So now what's the slope? You know the slope with this line. What's the slope? Negative 3/5. Y'all agree? Okay. Now let's do the other. The other one was negative 3x equal 5y plus 1. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is now remember, you got to get y by itself. So the first thing you're going to do is get rid of that 1. So what are you going to do? Subtract 1. So I get negative 3x minus 1 equal what? 5y. Okay? 5y. Now you're going to divide by what? You got to get y by itself. By 5. You can divide both sides by 5. So this is what it looks like. Look at this, guys. And so now you have y equals, and write this as two fractions. So negative 3x over what? 5, and then minus 1 over what? 5. So negative 3/5 x minus 1/5. So that's in slope-intercept form. Now tell me what the slope is. Negative 3/5. What is about the two lines? They're the same slopes. That means the two lines are what? Parallel. So the two lines are parallel. Since they have the same slope. Okay? All right, let's do another one like this real quick. All right, let's do another one. So let's say, so I'm going to go back right here. We're going to do one just like this, except we're going to change those equations. Okay? We're going to change the equations. So let's say line 1 has this equation. So let's say line 1 has the equation, let's say 4/3 x equal y minus 4. And so let's say L2 has this equation, 3x equal 4y plus 1. Okay, I'll make that up. Okay? And the question is, are those two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Are the two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Now, neither meaning neither parallel nor perpendicular. That's what that means. All right, so to determine if two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, you need to know their slope. You need to know the slope of those two lines. And to determine the slope, you got to get it in slope-intercept form. So let's talk about the first one. Okay, so remember that your solution is to write each line in slope-intercept form. All right, so here's my first one. That one's easy because that's just y. There's the coefficient of y here is 1. But I got to get what, but to get y by itself, I got to do what to both sides, though? Add 4. So I add 4. So I get 4/3 x, 4/3 x plus 4, right? Equal y. So what's the slope? 4/3. Good. All right, next one. This is going to be a little more work because you also at the end, you have to divide by what number at the end? 4. Yeah. So this one, you're going to say 3x equal 4y plus 1. Let's get rid of the 1 first. So you're going to subtract 1. So you got 3x minus 1 equal 4y. And then finally, you divide by what? 4. And then rewrite this as two fractions. So that's going to be 3/4 x minus what? Equal what? So what's the slope? 3/4. Okay, good. What do you notice about those two slopes? They're reciprocals. Are they negative reciprocals? No. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, are they parallel? No, because the slopes are not the same. Are they perpendicular? No. No. They're not perpendicular. They have to be negative reciprocals. So in other words, if this is 4/3, this has to be what? Negative 3/4. Okay? So they're not perpendicular either. So then you say what? Neither. So the answer is neither. So the lines, so the answer is neither. So the neither means they're not parallel and they're not what? Perpendicular. That's all that means. So if you graph those two lines, you'll notice that they're both positive. So the lines are both what? Rising, but one has a different steepness than the other. So it may look like this. I'm just making this up, guys. But when you graph it, it may look like this. It may look like one does this, and the other may do this. See that? That's what that means. But notice they're not parallel, and they're not what? They're going to intersect, but they're not going to intersect at right angles. All right? So you're going to have a problem like that in multiple choice, just like that. Okay? All right. Now, one more that I need to tell you. Still dealing with the idea of equations. And this is multiple choice, so I need you to be able to get this. Find the equation of a line Okay, now remember, a horizontal line has what slope? Okay, you don't know that yet. Okay, so just listen to me. Let's look at this horizontal line right here. You all agree that's a horizontal line? Okay, I'm going to pick 2 points in this line. I'm going to pick 2 points. Let's say for our purpose that this point here is 6, 4. Okay? Then this point here, which of these coordinates is going to be the same as this one? The x coordinate. So the x coordinate, oh, not the x coordinate, I'm sorry. The y coordinate. So the y coordinate is going to be what? 4, and the x coordinate, let's say, is -3. You all agree? All right, so if you have a horizontal line, notice that the y coordinates are the same. So this is going to be my x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay? Let's find the slope. Slope equals, what's y2? Minus y1, which is what? 4. Over x2, which is what? 6. Minus x1, which is, what's the numerator? What's the denominator? 9. And 0 divided by 9 on your calculator is what? 0. So the slope of a horizontal line is what? 0. So on the video I mentioned earlier, it talks about that. So all horizontal lines have what slope? 0. Okay. Let's talk about a vertical line. So let's say this is my vertical line, and let's say I'm using these 2 points. Let's say this point right here is 6, 4. And over here, do y'all agree that the x-coordinate is going to be the same? And let's say my y-coordinate here is -2. So 6, -2. The slope, let's call this x1, y1. This x2, y2. So the slope will be -2 subtract what? 4 divided by 6 subtract 6. The numerator this time is -6. The denominator this time is what? 0. If you put -6 divided by 0 in your calculator, remember you can never divide by 0. That's undefined. That's undefined. So that means that the slope is undefined. So all vertical lines have undefined slope. It's not a number. All horizontal lines have a slope, and what is its slope? 0. That means there's no slant to it. There's no steepness. It's just 0. All vertical lines have undefined slope. You really can't define it. It's undefined. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about this. Find the equation of a line. Find the equation of a line. And let's do part A. With slope 0 and contains the point 4, 3. Now here's how I want you to do this. So now listen carefully how I want you to do this. I don't want you to use any of those formulas. I want you to think about what you turned in today. If it has slope 0, you know slope 0, so you know right away it's what kind of line? Horizontal. That's how I want you to start thinking about this. It's a horizontal line. It has slope 0. So right away, your solution, the work, you're going to say, well, this has to be a horizontal line. Okay? Has to be a horizontal line. Now, here's what I would do, and this is what I think you need to do. I would go ahead and plot that point. Where's 4, 3 located? First quadrant. So let's say it's here. And I'm going to draw what kind of line through that point? Horizontal. Now, remember what you turned in. If it's a horizontal line or a vertical line, it only has how many letters? 1. It has 1 letter. If it's horizontal, what is that letter? Y. So the answer will be y equal, and now I want you to notice, what is the y coordinate always on this line? 3. Very good. The y coordinate is 3. So horizontal line, you're going to use your y coordinate. Okay, so that's your answer. That's the equation of a line. Part B, with undefined slope and passes through 4, 3. Undefined slope and passes through 4, 3. Now, you can't use the formulas anyway, because in order to use the formulas, you have to have a slope. And a vertical line has what? No slope. Okay, so here's how I want you to think about this. It's undefined slopes. That means it's what kind of line? Vertical. So here's your solution. Has to be a vertical line. So then I plot the point again. Here's 4, 3. Draw a vertical line. And remember, vertical or horizontal line has how many letters? Just 1. Horizontal is going to be what letter? Y. Vertical is going to be what letter? X. So your answer, X equal. And I want you to tell me, what is the X coordinate always on this line? 4. There's your answer. So this is actually number 1 on your final, just to let you know. That's number 1. It'll look like this. It's multiple choice. So you see how to do it? Okay. Now the rest of the problems, for the most part, are going to be from your test. I'm going to send you a study guide tomorrow, sometime tomorrow. I have a workshop all day tomorrow, so it's probably going to be tomorrow evening. I'm going to send it as to what to focus on your test. Okay? How to focus on your test. So you have your 4 tests. I'm going to post the keys to the 4 tests. Also, I don't think I have the keys up. I have the worksheets up for the keys, but not the test. So the way I would say for the test, for the final, is I would look over this, and I'm going to let you know that I will go ahead and run these off and give them to you on your final. These right here. Okay? But you need to know, you have to have read this through this, right? Okay? Because in your final, these things are all over the place. So, and you only have 2 hours. So you want to have gone over all this. So I'll print this out and give it to you, because we don't have time to go over it like we normally do in a previous class period. This is the last class period. You're done. So I'll just go ahead and give this to you. What was I going to say? All right, so tomorrow I'll send you the study guide. Just focus on this test. And I'll tell you which problems to look at. But in addition to those problems from your test, you also have this stuff. Oh, on one of your tests, I forgot, on one of your tests, remember there was a worksheet that you turned in that says subtract, the word subtract a polynomial from? Was that on one of your tests? No? Okay. So that's on your final, though. Remember I said, when we went over, I said on your final, they usually have the word subtract, and they do. They do have it again. So if it's not in your test, I will tell you which worksheet to go to. Okay? All right. Okay, so did y'all pass around the, because there's quite a few students here. I don't know whether they're going to, why they decide not to show up the day before the final, but they do.